You won't believe what this millionaire discovered when a young girl asked him to be her dad. Daniel felt the weighty silence in the lavish banquet hall like a crushing blanket, choking him in its opulence. He was the millionaire, the man who had orchestrated a life of success, yet, standing alone among the laughter and camaraderie of the other attendees, he sensed only the stark gap between them and the isolation that engulfed him. Then it happened. A small voice broke through. "Will you be my dad?" A girl with big doe eyes, framed by messy brown curls, stood before him, her earnestness like an arrow piercing his heart. The simplicity of her request bewildered him, layers of emotional barriers flared up, leaving him disoriented. What can I possibly offer to a girl like her? He thought, stunned into hesitation. Beneath his polished exterior, an ache stirred one he hardly acknowledged. As he stammered a non-response, internal questions raced through his mind. What would she see in him? The self-made millionaire who had sacrificed family for success. Fragments of childhood dreams, once vivid, began swirling in the recesses of his memory, dredging up shadows of loneliness he thought he could ignore. This little girl seemed to see something in him that he barely recognized himself. As days passed, a connection blossomed, each encounter with Lily drawing him deeper into a whirlpool of conflicting emotions. He taught her the intricacies of business, sharing tips and tricks, while she tugged at something fragile within him, the forgotten thrill of dreaming. But as their bond strengthened, darkness edged nearer. Whispers of scandal crept through the office, eroding the very foundation of his success. What if I lose it all? He pondered, dread settling in the pit of his stomach. The sharp contrast between his glamorous lifestyle and the loyal innocence of Lily sparked an unsettling invasion of doubt. Should he sacrifice his reputation for the budding relationship he cherished? Anxiety twisted like a knife, threatening to unravel everything he had built. He wanted to protect her from the turmoil surrounding him, yet he feared the price of that protection. The phone calls were unrelenting, the accusations relentless: betrayal, fraud, corruption. Each word hung in the air like a thunderstorm, heavy with impending doom. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Amidst the chaos, frustration clawed at him. Would holding on to the threads of his reputation mean letting go of the only genuine relationship he had ever known? Panic surged, tightening his chest. He saw Lily's vibrant, unyielding spirit juxtaposed against the fading specter of his corporate accolades. The burden hung heavy on him. Could he maintain his success while being the father figure she longed for? The segregation of his achievements from the reality of connection shattered his perception of what mattered. As pressure enveloped him, Daniel braced for a decision that would not only reshape his future but define the very essence of who he was meant to be. Could he confront the brutal truth without losing the fragile bond that gave life to a heart long starved for love? The following morning, with sunlight filtering through the blinds, Daniel's inner turmoil echoed loudly within the confines of his penthouse. He glared at his reflection in the mirror, scrutinizing the lines of stress etched deeply across his forehead. The lavish surroundings that once pleased him now felt like a gilded cage. Fame and wealth, once symbols of his triumph, had transformed into chains binding him to a crippling anxiety. Lily's innocent question remained lodged in his mind, a persistent reminder of the longing for connection that money could never fulfill. Each article that splashed across the tabloids made him more frantic. Critics dissected his every deal. Accusations of manipulation and deceit were flung his way like daggers, threatening to pierce the life he erected with painstaking effort. It was infuriating to know that this war waged through words could demolish the palace he had built around himself, but all he could think about was how Lily must feel when hearing those relentless accusations. Protective instincts battled with a bitter anger that rose from the perceived injustice of the situation. In the midst of it all, her laugh echoed in his mind like haunting music, a sweet reminder of what was at stake. Determined to confront the growing storm, he decided to act. Every day spent in the nebulous comfort of wealth made him feel more isolated, more distanced from the world around him. He needed focus, and Lily had become his anchor. Dialing her number filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. Her excited voice on the other end soothed the tumult of his emotions. "Hey, Lily. Can we meet today?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt inside. "Sure. Where?" Her eagerness was infectious, and Daniel felt a surge of warmth despite the darkness looming above him. "Let's south go to the park. I want to show you something cool," he replied, determined to uplift her spirit and shield her from his chaos. As he approached the park, he took a moment to watch children playing, their laughter cut through the heavy air. Daniel inhaled deeply, trying to harness their joy. When he spotted Lily running towards him, all thoughts about the accusations slipped away. Her happiness was tangible, a bright sunbeam piercing through his cloudy uncertainty. "Look, I brought supplies," she exclaimed, revealing a torn backpack brimming with art materials. She plopped down on the grass, and without hesitation began crafting a large mural, her small hands moving effortlessly across the canvas of paper. "Do you want to help?" she asked, her face illuminated with joy. The question caught him off guard, raising an unexpected contradiction within him. Should he step into the world of innocence, despite everything that was clawing at his heels? "Sure," he said, kneeling beside her. As he painted, each brushstroke liberating a piece of himself, he felt the walls he built because of fear begin to tumble. In unraveling his pretense, he discovered an unexpected talent. Creativity surged within him, hidden beneath layers of the businessman's guise. He felt free. As they painted, childhood reminiscences forced their way to the surface, awakening fragments of an identity he buried long ago. The sense of regret within each stroke reminded him of lost time, obscured aspirations, and the father he wished he could have been. Seeing Lily's delighted reaction enlivened a spark deep within him, reigniting a flicker of hope. Perhaps he could navigate these treacherous waters with a compass rooted in honesty instead of wealth. But the growing urgency of the scandal loomed like an impending storm. A familiar ache pulsed through him, the fear of losing everything for the chance to become the man Lily needed. Would he sacrifice his reputation for his personal truth? As the last rays of sun dipped below the horizon, he realized the critical choice lay ahead. Standing at the crossroads, he faced the formidable question that lingered in the air: how far was he willing to go for love? Unbeknownst to him, the call would soon arrive that would change everything. A confrontation he could no longer evade. The moment had come to define not only his legacy but the kind of father he would choose to become. Would he embrace the truth or retreat into shadows? The call arrived like a thunderclap in the dimly lit park, shattering the serene moment that had enveloped Daniel and Lily. His phone buzzed insistently against the grass, the sound jarring against the soft whispers of twilight. Glancing at the screen, he recognized the name, Max, his business partner. A knot twisted in his stomach. He had hoped for reprieve, a moment to bask in creativity, but reality had other plans. With a deep breath, he answered, bracing himself for the storm brewing on the other end. "Max," he said, unable to hide the tension that seeped into his voice. "Daniel. We need to talk. The tabloids are picking up momentum with these allegations. There's pressure from the board. They're discussing possible repercussions." Max's voice crackled through the line. Each word felt like a hammer striking another nail into the coffin of his carefully curated world. In that instant, Lily looked up at him, her innocent delight morphing into concern as she sensed the shift in his demeanor. She had been a balm for his troubled soul, but now, he could feel the weight of his roles clashing like titans: dedicated father figure versus ruthless businessman. As the ludicrousness of the situation began to dawn on him, a clarity emerged alongside the chaos. "I'll be there." Daniel hung up, determination replacing dread. He sat back, feeling the cool evening air seep into his skin, heightening his senses. He wasn't just a name in the headlines. He was a father, an individual, and now, he had the opportunity to choose how this story would unfold. Turning to Lily, he saw the worry etched on her face. "Hey, I need to go for a bit. Can you hold down the fort here?" he asked. A mix of apprehension and understanding flickered in her eyes. She was wise beyond her years. Will you come back? I was hoping we could finish our mural. Her voice was small, giving Daniel pause. He hesitated for a beat, torn between duty and the urge to nurture this newfound connection. Absolutely, he assured her, heart tightening at the thought of disappointing her. It was time to confront the looming shadows, but in doing so, he would carry a fragment of light with him, a reminder of what truly mattered. As Daniel left the park, he marched toward uncertainty. Each step was infused with resolve. He rewired his reasoning. Instead of viewing this as an obstacle, he framed it as a reclamation of his own narrative. He refused to be a mere pawn in their game. He would face the board and the negative narrative head-on. Upon arriving at his office, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Colleagues whispered anxiously, casting glances through the glass walls. Striding through, Daniel felt a surge of courage. The weight of both fear and hope propelled him forward. Today wasn't about defending his wealth, it was about asserting his identity. As he entered the conference room, Max was already pacing. The board members' faces were grim, expectant. Daniel, we need to manage public perception. You need to make a statement, clarify your position. Pausing, Daniel took a deep breath. A statement. He could draft a carefully worded response, deny the rumors, cocoon himself in meticulously crafted words that held no truth. Or, he could confront it all. An idea whispered from within, rekindling the spirit he had discovered with Lily. What if I opened up? He suggested, surprising even himself. The room fell silent, intrigued and skeptical gazes directed his way. Not just about the business, but about me. Let us go raw. Let us be honest about everything. The board members exchanged glances. Max folded his arms, skepticism etched on his brow. Daniel, that might not be the best move right now. You'll expose yourself to more attacks. Isn't that exactly what I need? They can only hurt me if I let them in. But if I share my truth, even the critics might soften. Besides, it's about time I find my voice. The admission dropped like a stone in the center of the room, creating ripples of uncertainty. Would he really go through with it? As discussions morphed into fierce disagreements around the table, Daniel's heart raced. The stakes were high, and the countdown toward transparency had begun. He was no longer just a businessman but a man ready to embrace vulnerability for something that mattered more than fame: his relationship with Lily and the person he wished to be. This movement towards authenticity opened new pathways, and with each shared moment, he felt the shadows recede. The confrontation loomed large, but the burgeoning anticipation of truth propelled him onward. What would he uncover about himself in the process? As conviction fueled his resolve, Daniel wondered what awaited him after the storm. Could his willingness to expose his flaws forge an even deeper connection with Lily, or would it come at a cost he wasn't prepared to pay? The decisions he made in that room would ripple far beyond the walls of the boardroom and shape not only his legacy but the father he aspired to become. Would he stand tall or falter under pressure? The reality of what lay ahead was only beginning to unfold, and uncertainty hung palpably in the air like electricity before a storm. The conference room buzzed with unease, the clamor of uncertainty a palpable presence, lingering in the air like mist. Daniel's heart raced, matching the escalating tempo of the arguments around him. It was a crucible of emotions, each board member representing not just a voice but a facet of his world that threatened to fracture. He could feel the stakes climbing, the pressure of their skepticism clawing at his resolve. Look, I know this sounds reckless, he began, breaking the stalemate with a voice that was steadier than he felt. But isn't it more dangerous to hide behind carefully crafted statements? Isn't that what got us into this mess? His gaze swept over the faces before him. A mix of fear and curiosity stared back. Instead of reacting, let us take control. Max shifted uncomfortably, his furrowed brow a testament to his internal struggle. Daniel, a transparent approach could backfire. There's a lot of personal information here. What if it gets twisted in ways we can't predict? Self-doubt crept in, whispering uncertainties, but he wrestled it back. I can't let fear dictate my journey any longer. My life, my choices shouldn't be dictated by headlines and critics. I owe more to myself, to Lily, than that. The conviction resonated deeper than any scripted narrative could manage. It was raw and true, drawing a rapt silence that made him feel more vulnerable but also invincible. Each inhalation carried the weight of what lay ahead, steeped in honesty. He reflected on his recent moments with Lily, the luminous hue of her laughter, the carefree strokes of paint on their mural, the unalloyed joy that reminded him of what it meant to embrace authenticity. I want to show her it's okay to be vulnerable. If I'm going to guide her, I need to model the courage it takes to stand in one's truth. The boardroom, once suffocated by tension, shifted in atmosphere as murmurs exchanged glances. A subtle rippling buzz began to build, a flickering spark of curiosity ignited by his resolve. The tug-of-war within him transformed into something constructive. He was peeling away the layers of doubt, revealing a clearer purpose. All right, Max finally conceded, an edge of hesitance still in his voice. What exactly do you propose we share? Daniel cleared his throat, digging deeper into himself. We start with the truth. The mistakes. The misconceptions. I have faced self-imposed pressures and those from the outside world that threaten to suffocate authenticity. I'm not just an executive, I am a father, a man grappling with his past, committed to discovering who I am, not just for the public or the board, but for the person who matters most, my daughter. Each word emerged as a brick laid down in a foundation of growth, difficult, but vital. He felt a new authority rise within him as others shifted in their seats, some nodding in recognition while others remained visibly uncertain. How much are you willing to expose? Came a voice from the end of the table, a woman with sharp features and keen insight. You know they latch onto every detail. Daniel's pulse quickened. There it was, the crux of his dilemma. How far would he go? A total unveiling came with the potential for backlash, but it also held the promise of genuine connection and transformation. What I share must be honest but measured, he replied, contemplating the balance between vulnerability and prudence. I'll portray the journey, not just the destination. Those nuances will make the story real. As discussions resumed, Daniel felt shifts within the group and acceptance of his direction began to trickle through the lines of contention. This was no longer merely about saving a business, it was an exploration of humanity itself. He was reclaiming his narrative, tapping into the raw power within himself that had lain dormant, overshadowed by its glossy facade. By daring to confront the unvarnished truth, he realized he might be paving the way not just for professional recovery but a personal renaissance. What would it mean, he wondered, when the truth, his truth, was shared with the world? The resolve solidified. He couldn't minimize the potential risks involved. But what would yield another string of rumors or a candid invitation to understand the man behind the headlines? He took the plunge into the unknown, pressing his weight firmly on this transformative path. Outside this room, shadows writhed, but he could feel the light beckoning. As the conversation wove together a new strategy, he wondered about the implications of his decision. Would confronting his fears grant him not just fortitude but elevate the relationship with Lily? Could the man stepping into this honesty withstand the truth once he shared it widely? The time had come. Daniel was ready to face the inevitable fallout, and with it, a realization washed over him. He could forge the relationship he coveted, both with the world around him and within himself, only if he stepped forward boldly. The journey was unfolding, and he stood on the threshold of something remarkable. What awaited him outside the austere walls of the conference room? Would the world embrace his vulnerability, or would he find that the hardest truths could become stepping stones toward greatness? The answers whispered through his mind like a ghost, teasing and provocative, a truth deeper than he had yet begun to discover. The flickering fluorescent lights brought Daniel back to the present as he stepped out of the conference room, his heart still pounding in the aftermath of his bold declaration. What felt like an exhilarating leap into the unknown now surged with the weight of reality. He made his way down the corridor, the chatter from the board already fading into a hum behind him. He could feel the walls of his world adjusting, reshaping around the new commitments he had just made. Each step echoed a mix of excitement and dread, a potent combination that rattled through his core. Did he really have the strength to open himself up to public scrutiny? Moments etched in Daniel's memory began to replay like an old film reel. Lily twirling in her new dress, her eyes sparkling with delight as she recounted stories of her day, and the endless questions of the kind only a child could muster. Would his newfound resolve resonate with her? Would she understand that being vulnerable wasn't just a choice but a courageous act to forge a deeper bond? Emerging from the corporate grind, he was greeted by the crisp evening air. The sun began to descend, casting golden rays that ignited the skyline into shades of orange and pink, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that shadowed him. He inhaled deeply, letting the air fill his lungs before exhaling the lingering anxiety. As he walked toward his car, he visualized their upcoming weekend painting, storytelling, maybe even venturing to the art museum where vibrant colors and captivating narratives intersected. Those plans now palpably reflected the deep desire within him, to be authentic, to be present. But introspection brought up fresh doubts. Was he equipped to teach Lily about the strength found within vulnerability? What if she never understood the reasons behind his past or the difficult decisions he would share? The thought of facing his own history had always frightened him, a gray memory filled with loss and the burden of expectations. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, he settled into the quiet of the house. He paced the living room, an emotional maelstrom gathering. He wrestled with what the board would unveil. How many of them had faced personal challenges they were refusing to acknowledge? Maybe their pasts were as complex as his, the recognition humanizing them despite the power struggles in that conference room. He reached for his phone, staring at the contact list. Should he reach out to someone? A mentor? A friend? But deep down, he understood the answers would not come from asking others. This journey was his alone. It was about finding the clarity that was held captive by his fear. The authenticity he craved had to start with him. Before he knew it, he was submerged in introspection. What had life been trying to teach him? The mistakes he made were bricks, not anchors. In each one was a lesson, a hidden competency waiting to be unlocked. Hence, with rapid determination, he began to outline the story he would share at the launch of the new initiative. As he wrote, a figure emerged on the paper, an abstract of his struggles, hopes, and aspirations intertwined. Would stripping back the layers provide others with the space to do the same? Could his narrative inspire others at the company to embrace their realities, shifting the corporate culture from one of polished facades to genuine connectivity? The realization ignited a fire within him. By the time Daniel leaned back against the couch, the outline was filled with raw honesty. He knew that he may be stepping into a minefield of opinions and speculations, and he might lose some allies in the process. But the potential rewards weighed heavier in his mind: a deeper connection with Lily, a more profound influence on those around him, and perhaps even a new way to lead that wasn't solely defined by spreadsheets and strategies. In that moment, he understood that embracing his truths could lead him somewhere fundamental. He would grow in ways unimaginable. He would set a bold precedent, not just for himself but also for everyone who sought to find their voice beneath the masks they wore. Daniel shifted uneasily in his seat, contemplating reaching out to Max, ready to initiate a more transparent dialogue about their strategy. But just as he set his mind to do so, a sudden realization surged, revealing one's vulnerabilities could invite both admiration and backlash, a dual-edged sword. Could he face whatever came next? Or was he simply casting himself adrift in the merciless waters of public opinion? He felt the tension coiling within once more. The residual weight of risky revelations loomed large before him. Tomorrow, he would meet the board again, and the thoughts echoed in his mind. Would he still feel solid in his choices, or would he give way again to self-doubt? As he shut off the light, the question lingered, stubborn and unrepentant: would his truth empower him or throw him into chaos? Morning came with the soft light slipping through the curtains, a gentle reminder of the new day ahead. Daniel stirred awake, the echo of last night's determination still resonating within him, though slightly dulled by sleep. He remained in bed a moment longer, absorbing the quiet around him, each rustle, each sound acting as a reminder of what was at stake. He recalled the way he had poured his heart onto the page, exposing himself in a manner that felt both courageous and reckless. Daniel rose, the weight of his commitments washing over him like cold water as he prepared for the day. The presentation loomed ahead, and anxiety twisted in his stomach. With each routine motion dressing, brushing his teeth he felt a flicker of resolve. Every choice he had made pointed toward a bold step forward, yet doubt crept alongside. Fueled by coffee, he opened his laptop, the glowing screen infectious with opportunity. Would today be a day of transformation, not just for him but for those who listened? He recalled one of the lines he scribbled in his outline: vulnerability is not weakness, it's the pathway to authentic connections. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. Could he inspire others to embrace this truth? However, as he read through his notes, the concerns surfaced again. He feared the board's reactions, the skeptics lurking behind their professional facades. Would they ridicule his approach as sentimental? Or worse, dismiss him as a naive idealist? With deliberate intention, Daniel selected a few powerful stories from his own past, anecdotes that illustrated moments of clarity through chaos. Each story acted as a thread, weaving a more complex tapestry of his experiences, but as he practiced, he couldn't shake the questions spiraling within. What if they didn't relate? What if the stories felt disjointed? He found himself pacing the living room again, a habit that mirrored his mental state, restless, searching for clarity amidst the chaos. The sunlight streamed in, illuminating memories of his childhood and the feelings of inadequacy that often accompanied them. It was as if the light was challenging him to confront those shadows, the doubts that followed him into adulthood. With each erratic pace, clarity began to solidify. This was his chance not just to share his journey but to foster a dialogue. He could weave his professional narrative with personal meaning, making his fear a centerpiece, not a barrier. Inspired, he transformed the disarray of his thoughts into a structured plan, outlining the key points he wanted his audience to resonate with, making space for questions and contemplation. Before he knew it, the clock had advanced steadily toward meeting time. He gathered his notes and took a deep breath, steadied by a surge of determination. Small victories were still victories, and if he could alter even a few perspectives, it was worth the dive into discomfort. Gathering his courage, he visualized Lily's bright face, her innocent encouragement nudging him forward. As he arrived at the conference room, the familiar glossy walls loomed around him, now a battlefield for authentic expression. He stepped inside, heart pounding insistently. The board members looked on, their expressions unreadable, but he felt an electric charge in the air, the anticipation of something significant about to unfold. With his heart racing, he initiated the presentation, using the stories as armor against potential judgment. He made eye contact, searching for connections, allowing moments of vulnerability to breathe. As he spoke, a shift happened. He realized that the air thickened not just with tension but with possibility. Was it his imagination, or did he see flickers of nods and engaged expressions? Just as he was finding his rhythm, sharing his childhood struggle with vulnerability intertwined with professional lessons, he caught movement from the corner of his eye. A veteran board member, known for his harsh critiques and guarded demeanor, leaned forward with an intense gleam in his eyes. Daniel felt a surge of fear clutch at him. Was this the moment he'd lose himself to summation and skepticism? He sensed the atmosphere shift, and with each word he delivered, the stakes were rising. Here it was, the real confrontation. Would this vulnerability lead to acceptance or to rejection? He pressed on, determined to uphold the authenticity he had fought so hard to embrace, with the haunting question of acceptance lingering on his mind. Would he leave the room fortified or fractured? Would others join him in this pursuit of connection, or would they retreat behind the curtains of professionalism? The moment of truth was fast approaching. Would his story empower him or thrust him into chaos? The room held its breath as Daniel plunged deeper into his narrative, the weight of expectation pressing heavily upon him. He studied the faces before him, some bored, some intrigued, but all scanning for flaws like hawks tailing their prey. Each sentence he perfected became a high-stakes gamble, a plea for acceptance wrapped in the clothing of vulnerability. The veteran board member's intensity felt like a spotlight, amplified by the curious expression on his face. Vulnerability is the fertile ground for growth, he asserted, more passionately than he had anticipated. He dug into his past with gritty determination, recalling a moment when he had fallen short in front of his colleagues, admitting how that failure had anchored his resolve. It was a shared experience, everyone had faced adversity. His hope swelled like a tidal wave. Perhaps he could make them see that his life was not merely a series of pronounced achievements, but a complex landscape of struggles that informed his professional identity. A low murmuring pulsated through the room, rattling his composure momentarily as heads nodded in reluctant acknowledgement. Yet, in the pit of his stomach, Daniel felt an ominous rumble, doubt clawing its way back from the corners of his mind. What if they were only humoring him? What if they still perceived his approach as trivial, something unworthy of boardroom discourse? Yet, as he pressed on, his voice steadied. He provided space for those moments of shared human experience, like that rainy evening when a young girl had asked him for guidance, drawing parallels with his decision to step out of his comfort zone. In that instant, he saw clarity flash through the veteran's eyes. Would he dare to reflect vulnerability back through the lens of a child's innocent query? It made everything lighter and heavier all at once, a collision of childhood purity and the rawness of adult expectations. Wrapped within that story, he felt himself begin to unravel a layer that had long tethered him to insecurities. The moment felt oddly transformative, as if the walls of the conference room were shifting, becoming semi-transparent. For the first time in his career, he was not performing to impress. Instead, he was sharing to connect. Suddenly, the board member interjected, his voice piercing through Daniel's thoughts. And what makes your journey different from countless others, Daniel? Why should we invest in your vision rather than just push for traditional outcomes? The question landed heavily, echoing Daniel's silent fears. Here lay the gauntlet, one that could easily morph into a knife, slicing through every thread of courage he'd woven. It was a direct challenge, bold and unyielding. He sensed the room tighten, all eyes transfixed on him as if waiting for a concession. Digging deep, he recalled the children he had listened to, their raw hopes wrapped in tales of hardship. Because within this narrative is the clarity we need to navigate a world that thrives on efficiency rather than empathy, Daniel countered. Connecting as individuals allows us to foster a culture where our company isn't just a business model, but a community one where we rise together. The silence that followed felt electric, each person processing his statement, their expressions revealing a spectrum of thoughts. He had thrown down a gauntlet of his own, daring them to consider the weight of human connection in their corporate machinations. But still, the looming question of acceptance weighed heavily in the air. Would this gamble pay off, or would he find himself ostracized for the audacity of his ideas? As the veteran's eyes narrowed, Daniel braced for the response. The moment hung, suspended in time, an intersection of dreams, fear, and the undeniable truth of his growth. Would he emerge from this confrontation emboldened, or would it bring him to the brink of existential reckoning? The room pulsed with tension, and in that silent standoff, everything hung in the balance. Daniel felt a spark ignite within himself, a spark that hinted at a newfound purpose. What he didn't know was how this critical exchange would shape not just his professional ambitions, but the very core of who he was becoming. Would he continue to lead from a place of vulnerability, or would the verdict change him forever? The board member's reaction pierced the air, a moment of stillness before resolution thudded against Daniel's chest. A flicker of understanding flickered in the veteran's eyes, tempered by skepticism. Daniel could sense the collective tension. It reminded him of a taut string, vibrating with potential yet ready to snap at the slightest misjudgment. Empathy doesn't equate to profit, Daniel, the board member replied, his voice neutral yet firm. How does this translate to bottom-line growth? The challenge hung in the air, challenging Daniel to reorder his thoughts. This was not merely an obstacle to overcome, it was a signpost marking a fundamental crossroads in his journey. His heart raced, not from fear but from an unexpected adrenaline coursing through him. The thought of conformity gnawed at him, but now he realized it wasn't enough to only advocate for change, he needed to showcase its practicality. Every hesitant step embedded in his vulnerability became a tactical advantage, lending itself to authenticity. He had to switch gears. Because, Daniel began, his voice not as steady but resolute, the stories we share, connections we forge are the intimate threads of innovation. Customers will not just buy a product, they'll invest in a vision, a mission, and a community. When we prioritize empathy, we build loyalty that outlasts any economic downturn. That's where growth lies. He felt emboldened by his own words. The room, once an intimidating arena, transformed into a space of possibility. It could be molded not merely into an environment for cold calculations but a fertile ground for genuine connection between people. As the flush of excitement radiated through him, Daniel recalled his early days at the company. His past was replete with a sense of detachment. He had chased profit and metrics while surrendering the personal touch, fostering a chasm that alienated him from both colleagues and clients. This wasn't merely a narrative evolution for him, but a reckoning. "What do you think?" he asked the board, catching a glance from Barbara, a junior marketing colleague. Her face reflected a mixture of anxiety and hope. It was time for Daniel to break the cycle. They all needed to understand that the human element could uplift their professional identities. The veteran's gaze narrowed, transforming into something that Daniel couldn't quite place. Was he contemplating the depths of what had been presented, or simply looking for weaknesses? Seconds stretched into minutes, and Daniel seized that time to turn inward. Doubts crawled back. Would he stumble back into doubt, or would he vault toward authenticity? When the board member finally spoke, his tone was measured. "You've said a lot, but can we operationalize this empathy in actionable terms?" Even as the question bore the sting of skepticism, it ignited something within Daniel. It was an invitation, not a closing door. Daniel sensed that perhaps, just perhaps, he wouldn't be dismissed outright. "Let us start with a pilot program," he suggested, enthralled by this spark of innovation. "A company-wide initiative, training us to step into our clients' shoes, enabling us to design our products with their narratives at the forefront." Whispers of intrigue rippled through the room, shifting energy palpable. "An ambitious endeavor," Barbara said, her tone lighter, and Daniel saw the fire in her eyes. She was in. In that moment, Daniel understood the weight of leadership. It wasn't merely about grandstanding or fitting a mold. It was about crafting an environment where they could question established norms together, harnessing their collective experiences to inspire one another. For the first time, Daniel wasn't standing at the precipice alone. This challenge had woven him into a collective which, though still tenuous, was undeniably potent. "Will you stand behind my vision?" Daniel asked, the boldness of the question igniting palpable tension once more. Although the room felt energized, doubt lingered. He was prepared to navigate this precarious terrain, yet uncertainty loomed like storm clouds on the horizon. Now, the pressing question looms, Daniel thought, an electric thrill radiating through him. How far would they be willing to go to champion this shift? Would he find allies in the trenches, or would he stand alone again? The quest for genuine connection had just begun, and Daniel knew he was on the cusp of something monumental. As the board member hesitated, pondering Daniel's suggestion, a part of him knew this dialogue was just the beginning. Would he seize this moment and transform professional landscapes through empathy, or would he be overwhelmed by the very insecurities he sought to transcend? The board member leaned back in his chair, visibly torn. Daniel held his breath, noting the minute changes in the man's expression. The air crackled with unspoken possibilities, and doubt began to swirl inside him. It wasn't fear of rejection, it was a fear of isolation. After finally breaking through to this group, what if the commitment to empathy faltered at the first hurdle? "Operationalize," the board member echoed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "You're pitching a concept, but how do we make this concrete?" The inquiry struck Daniel like a spotlight exposing his vulnerabilities. Operationalizing emotional connections wasn't a straightforward pursuit. He felt the weight of the silence. Barbara's eyes were locked on him, her hopeful gaze urging him to refine the vision, but a voice inside nodded him, demanding attention. What if it's just a trendy approach? It questioned his competency. Perhaps a phased rollout? Daniel proposed, a bit unsure but determined not to let the doubt overwhelm him. "First, gather insights from our customer service team about genuine interactions with clients. Then, implement workshops focusing on empathy building within departments." He glanced at Barbara, who was nodding enthusiastically. Her belief ignited his passion, yet the board's skepticism lingered like fog, wrapping around his confidence. "Workshops can be expensive. How do you intend to quantify the benefits?" asked a board member sitting at the end of the table, arms crossed guardedly. The challenge of metrics pushed Daniel to the forefront of his own convictions. He had witnessed the power of storytelling firsthand, yet what if the numbers did not reflect this intangible strength? Hesitation threatened to overtake him again, but Daniel planted himself firmly. We can start small. Identify a few metrics related to customer retention and satisfaction as we gauge the impact of our stories on the business. With each suggestion, he felt an evolution within himself. No longer just a salesperson, he was beginning to morph into a leader, a visionary who understood that humanity could drive profits. Encouraged by the modest support coalescing in the room, Daniel turned fully to the board. Imagine a world where our clients felt not only heard but seen. We give them a voice. We reflect their experiences back in our products. This isn't about sentimentalism, it's about anchoring our brand deeper into the market. He could see the flicker of realization turning in the eyes of a few board members. A transforming moment. Would they see the heart beneath the numbers? All right, Daniel, the board member finally said with a curt nod. You've sparked our curiosity. Initiate a pilot program. We'll provide a budget for initial workshops. However, we want consistent reporting. We need to see this through a professional lens. Relief washed over Daniel like a wave. This was not merely acceptance, but a mandate to lead. Yet, as he felt the orchestra of emotions undercurrent, his excitement, anxiety juxtaposed with hope, he recognized that momentum was only the first step. I'll prepare a detailed plan for the program, Daniel said, focused again on the strategic component. As he met each board member's gaze, the shadows of doubt slowly receded, replaced with a burning resolve. However, the journey from mere acceptance to genuine implementation bubbled beneath the surface, eager yet daunting. Was he truly prepared for the pushback that would inevitably follow from skeptics within the organization? Leaving the boardroom, he felt a surge of determination pulse through him. He glanced at Barbara as they exited. Are you ready for this? She asked, her enthusiasm infectious. He smiled at her optimism but felt the taut string of possibility still resting, waiting for the right moment to snap. The question lingered in his mind: how would they both navigate the complexities ahead? Their trajectory was unfolding, but what challenges loomed in their path? As they stepped into the bustling office, Daniel's heart beat with the thrill of the unknown. Let us prepare to disrupt the status quo together, he murmured under his breath, while the uncertainty of the future danced at the edge of his mind. As the weeks unfolded, Daniel found himself immersed in the passions of a newfound mission. The pilot program, now dubbed Empathy in Action, had launched, and excitement filled the office. Colleagues signed up for workshops, eager to explore a culture that valued genuine connection over data-driven transactions. There were hesitations, of course. Doubt lingered like an unwelcome houseguest. Yet, each challenge that arose only solidified Daniel's resolve. As he facilitated those early sessions, he witnessed something remarkable. People opened up. They shared stories that surprised even themselves, all while shedding the structured shells they had worn for so long. It became rapidly clear that vulnerability could transform these disconnected professionals into a team bonded by shared experiences. The deeper he delved into the emotional landscapes of the company, the more Daniel realized how closely interwoven his journey was with this initiative. He began applying the principles of empathy he advocated not only to his team but also to himself. He asked for feedback, inviting constructive criticism rather than shying away. This is what we've needed all along, Barbara remarked one afternoon after a particularly spirited workshop. Her enthusiasm resonated through the air, and Daniel couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. The initial skepticism from the board was melting away, supplanted by reports of improved morale and heightened productivity. The feedback mechanism was crucial. Daniel watched as genuine conversations occurred in the break room and collaboration flourished as barriers diminished. The culture, once rigid with hierarchy, began to ebb into fluidity, allowing a more collaborative spirit to emerge. While reports showed increased retention rates, proof that empathy could indeed be converted into profit, it was the palpable change in the office atmosphere that filled him with pride. He became a mentor to others who felt lost in their professional identities, guiding them to embrace their own stories just as he had begun to. His moments spent with Lily echoed within him, reminding him that emotional authenticity was not merely a business strategy, it was a way of life. Then came the day for Daniel to present the results of Empathy in Action to the entire board. As he prepared, his resolve wavered for just a moment. The fear of stumbling under scrutiny gripped him again. But he took a deep breath, closing his eyes and recalling Lily's warm smile. reminding him of that innocent spark of trust. Entering the conference room, he felt the familiar mix of anticipation and anxiety. The board members gathered, their expressions expectant, perhaps even intrigued by the unpredictability of this initiative. He stood before them, heart pounding but steadied by purpose. "Today, I want to share more than numbers. I want to share a vision," he began. The air thickened with energy as he detailed the initiative's growth, transforming cold metrics into warm narratives that underscored the transformation of the team and its connection to productivity and profit. With remarkable clarity, he glanced at the board members, inclusive and inviting participation. "We're not just a company, we're a community. When we embrace the authentic experiences of our team, we empower them to do the same for our customers. It's about forging bonds that transcend transactions, building trust in the name of true leadership." The reactions were mixed, but the tide had shifted. Where uncertainty once festered, curiosity paved the way for dialogue. Questions emerged, and he found himself relishing the exchanges. He didn't just wish to present, he wanted to engage. After his presentation, the veteran board member who had challenged him before surprised Daniel with his response. "You've opened our eyes to the possibilities beyond the spreadsheet," he admitted, nodding in respect. "Let us continue down this path. We want in." A wave of relief cascaded over Daniel. The seeds he planted had taken root, and they bore the fruit of recognition. They were no longer merely talking about his concepts, they were endorsing a vision that celebrated the potential of individuals embracing their truths. Walking out of the boardroom, exhilaration coursed through him. The gravitational pull of success had shifted, it was no longer solely anchored in numbers. He had achieved something substantial, not just for himself but for everyone around him. He was no longer just a businessman but someone who understood how to navigate the intricate tapestry of human emotion. That weekend, Daniel found himself back in the park, painting alongside Lily. The irony was not lost on him. Here he sat, embracing both the chaos of colors and the symmetry of connection, just as he planned to embrace the complexity of his boardroom experiences. "Look, Dad!" Lily exclaimed, holding up her painted canvas. "I made a dinosaur. And he has purple spots like yours." He smiled at her innocence, pride swelling in his chest. He had not only conquered the business dynamics that loomed over him but had succeeded more profoundly in embracing his role as a father. He had achieved recognition as a leader, asserting his place in the corporate landscape, but more importantly, accumulated wisdom in navigating the delicate relationships that truly mattered. Vulnerability had proven itself an asset, not a liability, becoming the bedrock of the fulfillment he longed for. In that moment, surrounded by the playful laughter of children, Daniel felt an undeniable wave of satisfaction wash over him. The transformation was not merely professional but deeply personal, increasingly intertwined. He had become the architect of his narrative, not one merely defined by wealth but shaped by authentic connections, creativity, and love. He had risen from isolation, finding strength in openness while standing tall alongside those who inspired him. With a final brushstroke, he encapsulated everything he had learned, creating a masterpiece that was more than canvas and paint. It was a testament to resilience. He was ready for whatever lay ahead, steadily grounded in a life transformed, ready to share this emotional journey with a world that now felt welcoming. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, a vibrant palette of colors reflecting the brilliance of his evolution, Daniel realized he had truly become the father he had once feared he could never be. Now it was time to share the stories of overcoming, vulnerability, and connection with the world. This was his legacy. You need to subscribe now to experience more incredible transformations like Daniel's. Leave a like now to support this channel and feed the algorithm for more deep, emotional journeys. Comment your reactions and theories about Daniel's journey. We want to hear your thoughts. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of vulnerability and connection. Don't wait even one more second to spread the word.